YouTube? Awesome Rider here. Welcome to my review for Kamen Rider Gotchard episode 15. So right off the bat, I want to say I'm announcing this is going to be my last weekly coverage episode of Gotchard. I am going to continue covering it in a different way, in two different ways in fact, I think, which I'll talk about at the end. One I've already decided on, and the other I'm gonna not leave up to you necessarily, but want to get your input on, and I'll talk about that at the end. But let's go ahead and get started with this episode. And again, forewarning, as part of the reason why I'm stopping these videos is I do make a lot of the same repeated points as has been pointed out to me because the show's problems persist, and they probably will be brought up in this episode as one of the reasons why I'm stopping weekly coverage. But anyway, this was effectively part 2 of XRex's debut. I mentioned last week how I was really surprised we didn't just get the debut fight at the end, that they restrained themselves. And this episode felt weird pacing-wise because, you know, while Rider is no stranger to two-parters that could feel like an hour-long or a 40-minute episode, you know what I mean? This one definitely felt like it was meant to be viewed as both episodes squished together. Like, usually when you have a two-parter, the episode, like the first one, will have like a more natural end, and then like kind of a cliffhanger or a setup or whatever, and like people will say it was a setup episode. But this one definitely felt like, again, it should have been viewed together because we spent so much of the episode, I would say like 85% of the episode, just in this little wooded area where they had the fight. So it made it feel really strange. Like by the time the episode was almost over, I mean, I was like, thank God, but I'm like, wow, we really just spent like the whole episode there, which made it feel really weird. Because ordinarily you would have them start the fight and then like the villain would run off and then they would catch up with them again later. But so it just felt weird structurally like that. Like I said before, I do like the form. It's not my favorite, but it's cool for what it is. I think I prefer UFOs a little bit more just because it feels a little bit more unique, not being a dinosaur one. They both kind of have oddly awkward proportions for fighting, but I think that like UFO just tickles that sort of like so odd it's silly and kind of endearing way. One thing that's kind of interesting though is that like he gets these super form in this one, and he's not like immediately proficient at it. It sounds like these weird mixed signals of like they're constantly praising Hotaro for being specialist boy, but at the same time he's actually not that good at fighting. Like I actually kind of find that refreshing that he doesn't immediately steamroll them. Like he's pretty easily like taken care of in the first time he transforms. Although admittedly the villain was able to get the upper hand because like at one point he was trying to save Rin, and he like for whatever reason felt like he needed to transform into the final form ride Gotchard form. Main Gotchard form, which I know he would get there faster, but it was really stupid strategically because then he was just getting, you know, beaten down harder. Also, side note, I really like how much Clotho hates Hotaro, just constantly calling him a twerp and a brat. It just feels like she's channeling my energy about him. You then also get some stuff with Rin. It kind of felt similar, quite honestly, to the debut of Dread, where like you had everybody there and everyone was kind of uniquely struggling, where Rin gets kind of like handcuffed or whatever, for lack of a better word, and you have the little girl villain taunting her, as she has been, which has been kind of vague. I thought there was going to be more of a big secret, like something that we didn't know and she didn't know, but it just boils down to her guilting Rin over like the vagueness of what happened with her dad and whether he betrayed the organization or not. And then you get this thing with like her saying, I think the reason you're coming after me is because you secretly want friends and family, and I'm like, bleh. I'm gonna throw up. Like, I can't physically throw up in my mouth. I'm like, I hope that's not the direction they're going with this, which they are. I think the villains, as I said, are the only thing I'm enjoying, but I wasn't a fan of, you know, seemingly heading in that direction for that character, especially since this little girl can seemingly outact most of the main cast. And then, you know, Rin gets free, kind of a cool moment for her, tosses Gotchard back the sword. And then you have this moment where, like, first of all, actually, I do find it funny, like, twice in a row now, we have this weird thing where, like, we have whoever's in the dread suit has to separate, like they bigenerate into just a nothing suit so that they can still do the finisher for the flashy stuff. I don't know why they have to do that, because there's been so many times in both Sentai and Rider where they've fired a finisher or a cannon at a ranger or a rider, and it makes the explosion, but then they're just demorphed. So I don't know why they do that. But anyway, there's this moment where like Gotchard is being like encouraged by everyone there, by like the main cast and the filler characters of the week, who I'm not even going to talk about. They get some stuff in this episode. I just don't care about them. Like maybe they'll pop up later, but usually these characters are nothing. They're no one. They don't matter to the plot. And I also don't care about them because they're not part of the main cast, and I don't even care about the main cast. But anyway, he gets like all this inspiration. I felt like it was supposed to be a big moment, but like I was really invested and inspired in it. It just felt so unearned. And I know this is a common complaint I've had that I repeat myself on, but it just feels like it's running through a checklist of things Rider is. You know, obnoxious protagonist that's optimistic, here's the forms, here's the generic speeches. Like this episode was chock full of generic toku speeches, which you'll always have because it's a kid show trying to inspire, but usually it's filled out with moments that will like either make those cheesy moments less annoying or make you actually feel invested in the cheesy moments because you care about the characters. Like, Sento was saying cheesy stuff all the time, but because I actually believed in him as a character, watcher, I didn't always roll my eyes, and it felt like it was meant to be this big emotional moment, and it just felt so hollow. Everyone's going to connect with series differently. There's probably people out there that are really enjoying it that maybe did connect with it, but for me it just like drove home how like little I'm enjoying the show, where it's like this just feels empty. It feels like it's supposed to be a big moment, but it feels empty. Like, I don't even know why he needed a pep talk for this. There's like a couple little like setups just kind of reminding you of the ongoing mystery. You know, you have the mom looking at the picture without the dad in there because reminding you that that mystery is still out there. And then you do have two other setups. You have the organization guy like observing everything, and he's like, oh, the game has just begun, and there's like a villain behind him, and they show a bunch of level 10s, which I guess is apparently supposed to be for the movie, maybe. I don't know, maybe that's true. I was intrigued by that because I'm like, what is this villain? Because we don't have like, is it someone like corrupted by a Kemi that's working with him, or is it just a straight up evil Kemi? Again, this might be for the movie, but I was thinking, God, it would be a cool idea to have a Kemi that was actually like having malice on its own. I just think it would be so much more interesting to have a challenging debate other than, no, Hotaro's right, Kemi's good, everyone else is with a different opinion, bad. But I don't know, that was a little bit of a tease. Again, I think it's supposed to be for the movie, so unfortunately nothing will ever come of that, probably. And then at the end, they do touch upon what happened last week with Hotaro saying, you know, I had a flashback that I didn't remember of knowing you when I was younger to Hopper 1. And I hope that that fleshes out more his motivations and connections to Kemi's, because right now also that feels very hollow. You know, I always bring the comparison in of Aruto from 0-1, where while I don't agree with his standpoint that robots are people because they're robots, I understood where he was coming from because they did a really good job of making me understand why he believed in human gears. But with Kemi's, it's just Kemi's! So I really hope this backstory, at least on paper, gets me to understand more about this. And yeah, then we end with kind of a big Christmas scene. I was really grateful I watched this episode on mute because I felt like everyone was being obnoxious there. But yeah, another episode that was very much decent by Gotchard standards, but I think it's my lack of investment with everything else going on about the show that has me just not enjoying it as much as I would in a series where they've done better groundwork. Now, as I said, I am going to stop regular coverage because, like I said, these reviews get kind of repetitive, as people have pointed out, a lot of the same problems, you know. I am going to keep covering it, though, and I'm going to keep up with it because this feels like a show that would be a nightmare to have to binge at this present moment. So I'm planning on two forms of coverage. One, I'm going to pop in every time, or most every time there's a significant debut. So when the mid-series form comes in, the final form, when we get another writer, I will primarily review that debut. Like, let's say when Rin becomes a writer, I'll review her debut, and it'll effectively be like reviewing that episode, like, hey, how was her debut? And I'll probably touch on some things in the periphery of like, oh, this was cool because it was built up in this episode. But then I will do like primary check-ins, and that's where I want your feedback, and I'll put up a poll too the day this goes up. Would you rather me do it based on episode count? Like, we're on episode 15 right now. Would you want to see me review 16 through 25? Or should I do it by arc? Like, at the end of episode 10, we reached kind of the end of an era, and that would have been a good chunk. This almost felt like a mini chunk. Should I review it by arc, or review it by episode? That'll be the second way I check in, but I will be checking in at significant debuts. But again, I want to keep up with the writer coverage because I kind of made a promise I'm going to try to do more writer coverage this year, but just doing it week to week is just kind of killing my spirit, and it's the same conversation over and over again. But what did you guys think of the episode? Like I said, let me know your feedback as well on how you'd like to see me cover it in chunks. Let me know in the comments. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell. See you good occasions for my videos. Dawson Rider, signing out.